For a brief moment, imagine that everything you have ever desired from other people, love, acceptance, acknowledgement, and purpose, was already subtly coming from within. That you were the sort rather than the seeker. That the exact energy you want to draw in is already coursing through your body, just waiting for you to recognize it. You see, we are all actors in this amazing stage of life. Nevertheless, the majority of individuals overlook the fact that the roles are clothing rather than identities. What if you approached life as if you already knew the solution to the question others are posing, rather than chasing what you believe you lack? Pretending in the superficial sense is not the goal here. It involves bringing your existence into harmony with the knowledge that there is nothing to pursue. You don't have to change into something. All you have to do is acknowledge who you are. People are drawn to your presence because of your inherent magnetism, rather than any sense of egoic superiority. Authenticity attracts people by remaining motionless, rather than by exerting effort. Present yourself as the person they are looking for, to reveal, not to control or impress. Show that the treasure isn't buried in the next success, concealed in the next relationship, or over the next hill. It is there in your existence, in your quiet, and in your breath. People react to the silence behind our eyes, the place where we have given up striving to become, and are just ourselves, rather than to the masks we put on. The paradox of life is embodied when you pretend to be the person they are looking for. By letting go of the need to find anything, you discover everything. When you stop trying, you shine. People notice you when you are no longer in need of attention, since they don't pursue you while you require it. They stay rooted in the understanding that life's dance inevitably finds its rhythm once more. Additionally, the music comes to you while you remain motionless in your own center. Thus, stroll as if the road were being revealed beneath your feet. Talk as if your voice is resonating with the truth. Navigate the world with the ease of someone who is already at home. Imagine realizing one morning that you're already everything you have been trying to become. You don't need to obtain the essence of your quest for love, prosperity, or affirmation. Instead, you just need to remember it. You've been projecting your desires into the future for years, chasing symbols and images in the hopes that if you work hard enough, travel far enough, or move quickly enough, you'll eventually reach the point where you are sufficient. However, what if such a location doesn't exist? What if the arrival you're looking for is a change in perspective rather than a certain moment in time? A flower doesn't fight or beg the sun to see it when it blossoms. It is entrenched in its own nature and just existing. As a result, the world reacts. The bees arrive, and the breeze blows through its petals. Similarly, you don't have to do anything to deserve love, respect, or attention. Already, you are it. You are the brightness you have been striving to get. You are the light you've been hoping to see in the eyes of others. The delusion that keeps you searching is the very notion that you are yet incomplete. The world has taught you to evaluate yourself based on comparisons, your performance, your appearance, your intelligence, and your usefulness. However, this training prevents you from seeing the more profound reality. Your worth comes from who you are, not from what you do or how you seem. Your certificate is your very being. When the cosmos created you, it did not make a mistake. The awareness behind your eyes, the breath you take, and the consciousness that enables you to hear these words are all intentional. They are manifestations of a higher level of intelligence. Furthermore, that intellect is something you are, rather than something you possess. You've always been sufficient. However, the mind has been trained to think otherwise. Not yet. It murmurs. A bit extra, please. One more accomplishment. One more praise. one more person to win over. You then flee. The calm that has been silently holding you all along, however, gets farther away the more you run. The paradox is that, rather of straining, you need to pause and observe the very thing you are running toward in tranquility. The reality of who you are is exposed. It is not arrogant to pretend that you are the person they are looking for. It is the return to the state of nature. It is the letting go of self-doubt. Clarity, not coercion or ego. You come to see that your presence, not your performance, is what attracts people to you. The serenity that results from not having anything to prove. The quiet confidence that comes from choosing oneself rather than trying to be chosen. You don't need to create charm, charisma, or significance. These are the ripples on the surface of a much deeper current. You let the truth of who you are emerge when you give up attempting to become someone. And there's a calm force in that reality. A force that is not performing, thus it doesn't require praise. A power that knows it is sufficient and doesn't need to pursue. The irony is in this. You attract more when you don't chase. People are more drawn to your ease when you don't look for approval. It's because you're being, not because you're trying. A person who is aware of their value have a certain trait. Not loudly or arrogantly, but in the way they listen, breathe, and enter a place without drawing attention to themselves. People are aware of it. You seem to be tuned in to a frequency that they have forgotten. Something in them is aroused by it. Not all of you, but a memory of themselves. When you allow yourself to rest, you allow others to do the same. You become a mirror, a reflection of the part of them that is likewise entire, complete, and sufficient, rather than a goal. You weren't brought into this world to look for approval from others. You were inherently valuable. However, you've been trained to mistrust it and hide it behind identities, roles, and masks that promise acceptance in return for being genuine. However, none of those positions really feel like home, do they? Because you remember, deep down, what it was like to simply be. When you were younger, you played because it came naturally to you, not because you wanted to be good. You laughed because joy had no boundaries, not to impress. That youngster is still inside of you. It's just quiet and waiting for you to realize that nothing has changed. The essence remains. Moving through the world should therefore come from a place of knowing, rather than a one of lack. Realizing that you are already the person they are looking for, and that you are not attempting to become that person. Allow your voice to be softened by that knowledge. Breathe calmly. Improve your posture. Let your heart open. To be heard, you don't have to be loud. To be seen, you don't have to be flawless. The loudest presence in any space is that of someone who is content with who they are. To live as if the treasure has already been discovered is to pretend that you are the one they are looking for. At least I've contributed to the search, I say. Being and becoming are very different from one another. You are raised under the delusion that you must always improve, get stronger, wealthier, more attractive, more brilliant, and more spiritual. Even though the world hardly ever tells you that. It is the culture of becoming, an unrelenting pursuit of an unfulfilled dream. You continue to escape from the discomfort of the now into the illusion of the future. Reaching is not the goal of being a pure, unadulterated person. It's about finding solace in the present. It is the understanding that your true self doesn't need to be enhanced, polished, or decorated. It merely requests to be seen. To be is to stand in the unadulterated reality of who you are, without trying to hide it from the outside world. To be is to sit quietly and not try to make things better. Allowing yourself to exist effortlessly is what it means to be. This contradicts everything you've been taught. You received praise for your accomplishments, rewards for your performance, and encouragement to develop a kind personality. Performance-based love is always subject to conditions. Furthermore, the soul does not flourish under certain circumstances. It flourishes when it is allowed to be itself. You see, the idea that your current identity is insufficient is the foundation of becoming. That in some way, your value rests only beyond the next objective, title, or acknowledgement. Every step on this never-ending stairway promises fulfillment, but it never quite materializes. Because the mind has already focused on the next step by the time you reach that one. It's a trap, masquerading as advancement. A never-satisfying identity treadmill that keeps you busy. While this is going on, the treasure is hidden in the one spot you aren't searching. In the present moment, in silence, in the act of merely existing. Being is not a passive state. It is neither sluggish nor static. It is the presence of consciousness, rather than the lack of movement. You are not asleep to life when you are being. You are aware of it. You are not lost in a version of yourself from the future. You are totally focused on what is. You don't have to pretend, defend, or pursue in that state. You don't exist to be noticed. You're observing. You're not talking to make an impression. You're communicating. You're not attempting to become. You're letting what's already there come through. The majority of people don armor-like layers of identity. They present themselves as a resume, rather than as a human being. This is what I do. I possess that. I've accomplished these goals. However, those layers have little to do with who you really are. The understanding that lies beneath it all is who you are. The area where your ideas come and go. The silent presence that is beneath your words, feelings, and narrative. Additionally, you don't have to construct it. All you have to do is identify it. Being is beautiful because it only requires your presence. It's not an assignment. It's not a habit. You don't become better at it. You don't improve as a person. You either recall it or forget it. That's all. And something remarkable occurs when you recall it. You start to show through, see through, but not invisible. Your protections are no longer being used by others. Your essence is met by them. They know you're genuine because you have nothing left to conceal, not because you're attempting to prove it. You're not occupied with becoming. All you're doing is letting others see you for who you are. Being comes with a calmness, a serene assurance that makes no demands of the outside world. You don't need someone to affirm your existence. You're not putting on a show to attract attention. You're just completely present. That completeness is sufficient. Even if they are unaware of it, people are fed up with facades, which is why that wholeness is so alluring. They are drawn to presence, authenticity, and the sense of being with someone who has nothing to prove. Becoming is tense. The chase is always tight. The mind is looking ahead, envisioning a time when everything makes sense. However, there is no stress in being. It doesn't tilt toward the future. Today it is relaxing, and there's a release in that rest. You give up running. You give up resisting. You give up bargaining with life. You start to flow. Oddly enough, things start to line up at that point. At that point, the doors you were pushing against start to open by themselves. Your vibe shifted, not because you coerced them. You gave up trying to control the results. You gave up attempting to manage how people see you. The moment responded because you trusted it. You didn't gain strength. You just stopped losing sight of your strength. Growth is perfectly okay. Growing, learning, and changing are all perfectly acceptable. However, these are not prerequisites for being, but rather its results. Being yourself doesn't require self-improvement. Growth should be a natural manifestation of who you have always been. rather than a tactic to go away from who you are. Life has the room to mold you from the inside out, without pressure or pretense, once you stop striving to become. The idea that you need to do more, be more, and achieve more in order to be sufficient causes a great deal of unhappiness. Only being, and everything, is already finished in that being. We frequently overlook the fact that perception influences reality much more than reality influences perception. The lens through which life reflects back at you is your self-perception, the image you silently hold in the theater of your mind. The world around you is not distinct from you. You're caught up in it. Your inner self is not concealed from the outside world. It is continuously transmitted in ways that are too nuanced for words to describe. This is the peculiar paradox. What is objectively real has no effect on the world. It reacts to what you think is true about who you are. Your truth, not the truth. The emotion, not the facts. And there is a frequency to that emotion, and a signal is sent out at that frequency. You may think that events are the result of chance, luck, or outside influence, and that the universe is cold, impersonal, and uncaring. However, your experience is shaped by this notion itself. Therefore, life obliges you when you live with the belief that you are unworthy, unprepared, or insufficient, not because it is cruel, but rather because it is introspective. It reflects your vibration, not to punish you, but to give you a better understanding of who you are. In this way, life is a mirror to awaken within, rather than a challenge to conquer. You see, you already play a part in this enormous dance of life. You're not waiting to be selected. You're not waiting for someone to open the door when you're outside the party. The door has never been closed. It was you who hesitated. It was you who had doubts. It's because you forgot, not because you're undeserving. You overlooked the fact that those who remember who they are able to bend the world around them. There is a gravitational pull to the energy of certainty, even when it is silent, and it's not arrogance when you feel like the person they're looking for. Alignment is the cause. The mind is programmed to hold off on believing unless there is proof. Before it feels, it wants to see. Before committing, it seeks confirmation. However, life's deeper movement operates in the opposite direction. The outside environment changes to accommodate your feelings after you experience them. Despite how it frequently appears, it's not magic. Although it can be effective, it's not manipulation, it's resonance. Life advances in the direction of the frequency you emit. I am the one when that frequency declares that I am it. I've already been selected. The world then starts to reflect that back. But not because it chose to. It was always the case. The radio was tuned by you. You may have been advised to wait your turn, be modest, not think too highly of yourself, and prove your value by going through hardship or making sacrifices. Who did you get those ideas from, though? From where did they originate? Are they simply inherited notions that have been passed down by people who have forgotten their own light? Or are they ancient truths? Pretending is not the goal of the game. It has nothing to do with boosting your self-esteem or seeking attention. It's about realizing that there is a silent but unmistakable presence at the center of your being that doesn't require permission to exist or affirmation to be expressed. It is already, and you become the one who is embodying rather than searching when you begin to leave that area, not with noise, but with knowledge. People who are not reaching, grasping, or performing have a certain allure. They are not there to be loved if they enter a room without worrying about being accepted. They are there to be. Others are stirred by something in their existence, not admiration, but acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of that similar, frequently long-buried existence within themselves. As a result, The person who remembers serves as a mirror for others who have forgotten. The person who walks in alignment serves as a reminder to others of what it is to be authentic, entire, and present. The part you perform is not who you are. The narrative you tell is not who you are. The identity you defend is not who you are. The inner self wears all of those clothes. The actor removes the mask, and the entity moves forward when you change your perspective and start to perceive yourself as the person they are looking for. This change is not significant. There are no fireworks or applause. It appears in the quiet times, when you cease seeking approval to be who you are, when you cease apologizing for occupying space. Sitting in your own presence and realizing that nothing is lacking is when you cease modifying your expression to fit the comfort of others. That all you aspired to be was already there in the form of seeds, just waiting to be acknowledged rather than planted. Furthermore, that realization is not a mental phenomenon. It is a change in the way you hold your own name, a shift in resonance. When you realize you're the one, your gait changes. Your voice has a distinct rhythm. You listen more intently because you're not preoccupied with self-doubt, not because you're attempting to gain favor. You're not searching for behavioral cues. The cue is you. To begin, you are not waiting for a signal. The signal is you. Additionally, this is not taught. It is recalled. After straying through the mist of amnesia, it is the soul regaining its core. It's easy to believe that only a select few, the prosperous, the educated, and the exceptional, may experience this condition of existence. However, that is merely an illusion. The so-called extraordinary ones were frequently just people who dared to think that their essence mattered and that their inner world had weight. They weren't picked by chance. They made their own decisions, not in defiance, but in remembering. You are also able to do the same. Subtle internal readjustment, not coercion or manipulation, by seeing oneself first instead of waiting to be noticed. Your perception's posture determines how life unfolds. You can't pretend to be the one. You have to sense it. Furthermore, it doesn't need external validation. All it requires is inner honesty. Everything changes when you embrace the energy of already being it and let go of the urge to prove yourself. You altered how you interacted with the world, not because the world changed. A new reality is not necessary. You require a new I. You don't require permission. You must be conscious. Being wanted is not something you have to pursue. You must keep in mind that you are already. The world as we frequently perceive it seems to be a series of events taking place all around us. Obtaining jobs, impressing others, meeting standards, and moving up the hierarchy are all important. And in this seeming chaos, we become ensnared in the idea that we have to perform in order to fit in, that we have to achieve some degree of external significance or success before we can let ourselves feel deserving. But what if this is completely backward? But if you've been attempting to become something rather than realizing what you already are? The illusion lies in the idea that you are somehow separate from the value you seek. You may imagine the permission by some authority figure. You may never meet and surrender your human freedom. If you want any permission, you may contend your freedom from within. You become a chameleon, adjusting, modifying, shrinking, or inflating in response to what you think the world wants. What if, however, this is entirely reversed? The misconception, however, is that you are somehow distinct from the worth you want if you have been trying to become something instead of accepting who you currently are. You might picture someone in a position of authority giving their consent. You might never come to terms with and give up your human freedom. You can fight for your independence from within if you desire any permission. You transform into a chameleon, changing, expanding, or contracting, to suit your perception of what the outside world desires. However, doing so takes you further away from your center and the serenity that is unaffected by trying. You are not present when you perform. Instead of seeing, you are attempting to be seen. Instead of embracing, you are attempting to be accepted. Additionally, your nature is distorted by this very act of seeking praise. Your true self is filtered, altered, and diluted till it looks acceptable, but isn't authentic. You cannot pretend to be someone else and have a strong connection to life at the same time. There's no need for another performance. Another polished version of someone attempting to seem worthy is not necessary. Presence is what the world needs. Unvarnished, genuine, unassuming presence that attracts attention without asking for it. You thought the mask was your face. You've forgotten that value cannot be attained. It has come to pass. It was never intended for you to strive for your position in the cosmos. You already fit in. However, you act as though you have to prove yourself when you forget this. As a result, you approach conversations tense. You feel uneasy when you walk inside rooms. You're afraid when it comes to relationships, because you are secretly hoping that the world would acknowledge your importance. This waiting turns into a prison for you, because you give the world the ability to reject you if you grant it the ability to affirm you. Genuine authenticity is quiet, does not make an announcement or call for cheers. It just is. You start to access a different type of power, a peaceful magnetism, a gravitational pull that arises from ease rather than effort when you stop performing and altering your presence to fit the expectations of others. You become indisputable when you are at ease in your own flesh. You are what you have stopped repressing, not because you are attempting to be someone else. You're not attempting to make an impression. And the most astounding thing about you is that you don't even try. The paradox is that those who give up on attempting to fit in are frequently the ones who fit in the best. People who quit seeking approval frequently get it effortlessly. They no longer oppose themselves, not because the world has changed. The effort suggests you're not quite there yet, and this turns into a missing frequency. However, you align with the deeper rhythm of existence when you embody what you want without trying to achieve it, and when you rest in your own being without feeling guilty. Being the best is no longer necessary. They weren't picked by chance. They made their own decisions, not in defiance, but in remembering. You are also able to do the same. Subtle internal readjustment, not coercion or manipulation, by seeing oneself first instead of waiting to be noticed. Your perception's posture determines how life unfolds. You can't pretend to be the one. You have to sense it. Furthermore, it doesn't need external validation. All it requires is inner honesty. Everything changes when you embrace the energy of already being it and let go of the urge to prove yourself. You altered how you interacted with the world, not because the world changed. A new reality is not necessary. You require a new I. You don't require permission. You must be conscious. Being wanted is not something you have to pursue. You must keep in mind that you are already. The world as we frequently perceive it seems to be a series of events taking place all around us. Obtaining jobs, impressing others, meeting standards, and moving up the hierarchy are all important. And in this seeming chaos, we become ensnared in the idea that we have to perform in order to fit in, that we have to achieve some degree of external significance or success before we can let ourselves feel deserving. But what if this is completely backward? But if you've been attempting to become something rather than realizing what you already are? The illusion lies in the idea that you are somehow separate from the value you seek. You may imagine the permission by some authority figure. You may never meet and surrender your human freedom. If you want any permission, you may contend your freedom from within. You become a chameleon, adjusting, modifying, shrinking, or inflating in response to what you think the world wants. What if, however, this is entirely reversed? The misconception, however, is that you are somehow distinct from the worth you want if you have been trying to become something instead of accepting who you currently are. You might picture someone in a position of authority giving their consent. You might never come to terms with and give up your human freedom. You can fight for your independence from within if you desire any permission. You transform into a chameleon, changing, expanding, or contracting to suit your perception of what the outside world desires. However, doing so takes you further away from your center and the serenity that is unaffected by trying. You are not present when you perform. Instead of seeing, you are attempting to be seen. Instead of embracing, you are attempting to be accepted. Additionally, your nature is distorted by this very act of seeking praise. Your true self is filtered, altered, and diluted till it looks acceptable, but isn't authentic. You cannot pretend to be someone else and have a strong connection to life at the same time. There's no need for another performance. Another polished version of someone attempting to seem worthy is not necessary. Presence is what the world needs. Unvarnished, genuine, unassuming presence that attracts attention without asking for it. You thought the mask was your face. You've forgotten that value cannot be attained. It has come to pass. It was never intended for you to strive for your position in the cosmos. You already fit in. However, you act as though you have to prove yourself when you forget this. As a result, you approach conversations tense. You feel uneasy when you walk inside rooms. You are afraid when it comes to relationships, because you are secretly hoping that the world would acknowledge your importance. This waiting turns into a prison for you, because you give the world the ability to reject you, if you grant it the ability to affirm you. Genuine authenticity is quiet, does not make an announcement or call for cheers. It just is. You start to access a different type of power, a peaceful magnetism, a gravitational pull that arises from ease rather than effort when you stop performing and altering your presence to fit the expectations of others. You become indisputable when you are at ease in your own flesh. You are what you have stopped repressing, not because you are attempting to be someone else. You're not attempting to make an impression. And the most astounding thing about you is that you don't even try. The paradox is that those who give up on attempting to fit in are frequently the ones who fit in the best. People who quit seeking approval frequently get it effortlessly. They no longer oppose themselves, not because the world has changed. The effort suggests you're not quite there yet, and this turns into a missing frequency. However, you align with the deeper rhythm of existence when you embody what you want without trying to achieve it, and when you rest in your own being without feeling guilty. Being the best is no longer necessary. All you have to do is be totally present, and the appearance of separation vanishes in that company. A lot of individuals consider life to be an audition. It's as though every time needs to be carefully chosen, every phrase must be carefully considered, and every encounter needs to be maximized for approval. What, though, are you trying out for? The judge is who? And what happens when you understand that there is no final score, no stage, and no panel of critics? There is only this instant, this breath, this opportunity to be completely authentic and unadorned. And something amazing occurs when you accept this moment without opposition. Instead of performing, you now take part. You now express rather than edit. This does not imply that you become irresponsible or uncultured. It implies that you become organic. A river doesn't practice its flow. A flower doesn't inquire about proper blooming. They are merely life's extensions. You are an extension of life as well. However, your mind is capable of self-deception, unlike the river or the flower. A mind capable of self-imitation. It involves deducting everything that is untrue. It involves removing the layers of performance until what's left is a genuine presence rather than a part. Someone who has nothing to prove exudes enthusiasm. When you're with them, you sense it. You find yourself impressed, even though they don't try to impress you. The area orients itself around them, despite their lack of attempts to control it. Power in the conventional sense is not what this is. Alignment is the cause. It's the resonance of someone who has given up attempting to be someone they're not. They don't speak in order to be heard. They speak because they have something genuine to say. They were never speaking to be validated, therefore it's okay if no one pays attention. They were simply being. And so, you must ask yourself, are you trying to be liked, or are you being yourself? Are you curating your life to match the highlight reel of someone else? Or are you moving from the quiet current within? Are you seeking recognition, or are you recognizing yourself already? Every moment you perform is a moment you miss the beauty of authenticity. And the great tragedy is that most people will go their entire lives without ever meeting their true self because they were too busy performing a version of themselves that they thought others wanted to see. Here's the reality though. Nobody else is aware of what the ideal version of you should be. Your blueprint is unique to you. Your inner music is not heard by anyone else. So stop searching for your cue outside of yourself. Give up looking for indications of your value in the faces of strangers. Quit changing the level of your truth according to potential listeners. You're not meant to be a replica. Your voice is meant to be heard. Furthermore, there is no need for further noise in the world. More truth is required. Your veracity. You run the risk of being misinterpreted if you stop performing. You run the risk of being condemned. You risk being seen without armor. But you also open the door to real connection, because only the real can meet the real. And once you have tasted that kind of connection, once you have stood in your own essence without needing approval, you will never again be satisfied with applause for a role you played. You will want only to be known for what you truly are, and you will want to know others in the same way, not through their performance, but through their presence. You and what you are looking for are one and the same. It is a distortion of your own consciousness, rather than a representation of reality when you feel cut off from the longing that pulls at your soul. What do you so fervently pursue outside of yourself? In actuality, significance, affection, recognition, and belonging are signs of something dormant within you. You don't have to go out and look for it. It is that you have to realize that it has always existed. The desire to look for the treasure is a sign that it is there. We are indoctrinated to think that the world encompasses us, and that we are tiny pieces of a larger, external reality. However, this is just half of the tale. What if, on the contrary, you become the world? What if your consciousness shapes and filters everything you go through, including encounters, successes, and failures? Then you need to acknowledge that you are already involved in the outside world, rather than trying to conquer it. It is not out there, distinct, and inaccessible. It is now occurring directly through you. This is the strength of self-identification. You stop chasing shadows when you start to perceive yourself as the source instead than the seeker. You give up trying to shape yourself to fit with other people's patterns. And you begin to realize that you are the one who drew the patterns in the first place. Since you are aware that you are the one making the decision, you are not attempting to be selected. It comes from the deep understanding that nothing can reflect back to you what you have not already entertained within yourself. Not from ego or superiority. Your inner condition is reflected in all interactions, events, and reactions from the outside world. They are neither imposed nor arbitrary. They are mirror images. If you feel overlooked, it might not be because people aren't paying attention to you, but rather because you've forgotten how radiant you are. If you feel invisible, it could be because you have dampened your inner light by thinking that it needs to be verified by someone else. However, what occurs if this dynamic is reversed? The urge to be accepted vanishes, and a serene conviction takes its place when you proclaim that the light appears today, not because someone sees it, but because it just is. You don't question your worth anymore. You are aware that you are. It's not because of your performance or accomplishments, but just because you are. That's all. That's the entire miracle. Being validated by existence itself is what it means to exist. Life has given you consciousness, and all of your grasping, needing, and trying starts to lessen if you can recall it, even for a few while. Action does not vanish from this location, but its quality is altered. You continue to move, talk, and interact, but from a grounded center, as opposed to a ravenous emptiness. You are no longer sending out a "please see me" signal. You're just glowing without any attachment or demand. People sense it too. Even while they might not comprehend it academically, they can sense the difference. Someone who is aware of their identity exudes a distinct energy. Someone who has completely dismantled the performance, not someone who performs knowledge or believes they know. Ironically, you typically become more magnetic the moment you stop trying to be noticed. It's not because you're attempting to attract, but rather because you've stopped ignoring your own existence. The static, desperation, and self-consciousness that function as a barrier between you and the outside world have all been eliminated. There is room in its place, silence. People are drawn to people who are content with themselves, not because they anticipate anything, but rather because peace is uncommon and lovely, yet it eludes you as soon as you try to pursue it. The illusion of absence is confirmed by the act of seeking. If you want to live as the person people are looking for, you must stop trying to become that person, and instead, become the awareness that is already there and doesn't need to be anything else. The contradiction is that when you stop looking for what you want, you become it. When you can no longer grab, you find what you want. When you are done using the reflection, you get it. The outside world also changes throughout this transition. It's because you've altered your point of identification, not because you've twisted it. You don't have to wait for the mirror to grin. You're grinning, and the mirror reacts appropriately. You are no longer searching for the crowd to applaud your performance at last. You've completely departed the stage and realized that the performance was never truly powerful. It was in the presence of something that doesn't require performance. You don't have to become passive as a result. It indicates that your actions are no longer an effort to make up for perceived deficiencies. You continue to produce. You still make a contribution, but it comes from wholeness rather than hunger, overflow, or emptiness. And everything is affected by that difference. It affects how you speak, stand, make decisions, and interact with others. People in your immediate vicinity start to notice a change. Not always intentionally, but subtly and clearly. You're not searching for anything anymore. You're living it. And the world starts to reflect that reality as soon as you live it. To identify internally means to comprehend the source of the external world, rather than to reject it. The unseen is the source of every movement in the visible world. Every echo has a source, and once that source is identified, it can never be fooled for the echo again. So don't confuse the applause with the music. Give up believing that the end point is the knot of approbation. Give up believing that you are valuable in the sight of others. You're not here to be found. You're here to be remembered. At that point, the path is inward rather than forward. Deeper, not higher. You're not growing into a better person. Everything that told you you were inferior is being unlearned. And the need to search disappears in that unlearning. You're not attempting to be the person they are looking for. You're coming to the realization that you are, and always have been. You were trained to think that you were distinct from your own power, light, and essence, which is the only reason it ever felt different. However, nobody can steal what you already possess or give it to you.